So last Saturday, Sean Strickland won a unanimous decision over Krzysztof Jotko in what amounted to be a shellacking from the longtime UFC veteran. I've tuned into Strickland's long career for a number of years now, and seeing that he's finally found some more consistency after a long layoff, I thought it'd be neat to discuss how Strickland's striking actually works. In 2018, Strickland suffered a horrible injury following a motorcycle accident, but before that, he was a rising contender in the welterweight division. His best win was over Tom Breeze, and he showed tremendous promise, albeit with a worrying catch. At his best, Strickland is a volume pressure fighter who is content with punching in volume and forcing his opponents to cover up. But what makes him unusual for pressure fighter is that he doesn't solemnly bend at the knees or put weight on his lead leg. The best way to describe Strickland's pressure is leisurely. Since he keeps his stance straight up in the air, Strickland doesn't have the posture to quickly close the distance. Instead, Strickland will stroll forward, pump the jab, and rotate through to rear kicking. This forces his opponents to either continuously back up and give him space or punt at their bodies, or they'll stand their ground and try to swing back. And this is where Strickland's striking has surprised me at every turn, as his defense consists entirely of swinging his head back and using his forearms to block strikes. In almost all his fights, Strickland has been clocked by a left hook while his head is in another stratosphere, but he has entirely negated that by having a pretty solid chin. Most of his opponents are also a lot shorter than him, so his taller stance and leaning back may also reduce the full swing of his opponent's strike. But Strickland isn't entirely defenseless backing up. Instead of waiting for his opponent to finish their offense, Strickland will often backstep into the right hand or try for a check hook. Given his longer physique, this can often work out for him as his opponents are stretched entirely too thin. But I think that's what makes Strickland an interesting fighter. He has tremendous power in his hands, but he isn't concerned with landing the one-shot knockout punch. Instead, he'll spend a lot of his fight bashing his opponent's guard with 1-2s and exiting left hooks. His jab comes from underneath his opponent's guard, and he often mixes it up with an occasional left hook to surprise his opponent. He isn't turning into his punches or putting much weight into them, but by consistently landing, he can pile up the damage and eventually land a punch with substance. While this limits Strickland's output when his opponent backs away from him, I'm not particularly sold on Strickland as a top contender, as his defensive flaws will likely be his skill ceiling. However, as a sub-top 10 fighter, he's extremely fun to watch and can overwhelm the vast majority of fighters. He has beaten some notable names, however that is yet to be seen at middleweight. Strickland is tricky to cleanly beat, mainly because he does so well when exiting exchanges, and his power can keep him in most fights where he should have melted early on. But I thought it'd be a good time now as ever to talk about the strange but effective fighter that is Sean Strickland and his new life in the middleweight division. He has a lot of great matchups ahead of him, and I'm excited to see where he ends up going. If you like our content, please give us a like, comment, or subscribe. If you want to help us further, you can always subscribe to our Patreon. Starting at $3, you can get access to our exclusive content such as alternate commentary tracks, video documentaries, video essays, and other podcast episodes.